Hi, everyone. Thank you again for volunteering to serve as retreat leaders on the sophomore retreat this year. The theme is mercy, and this is Module 2 on group facilitation. All right, a few things you need to keep in mind as a small group facilitator. I like the word facilitator because it implies that you're helping things to happen, but you're not making things happen. God is in charge, okay? The Holy Spirit is the true leader of your small group. You're facilitating, you're helping God to work in the midst of the group of people that you're involved in, but God is really the one directing the conversation. So it's really important to remember that. Yes, we're calling you leaders, but that you're really a facilitator and God is really making things happen, that the Holy Spirit is really in charge. All right, so remember that as number one. Then, as a facilitator, you do set the tone in your group. So depending on what we've just talked about or what we've just done on the retreat, you want to maybe kind of try to set the tone for your group. You try to set the mood, and that's by your behavior, by your interaction with your co-leader, by your body language. All of these things can kind of set the tone for the group. So if you just come off of icebreakers, you can be kind of more relaxed and chatting with kids as they come to your group. But if you just come off of a talk that's a little more serious, you want to be a little more reflective or serious as people are gathering in your small group. As a facilitator, we want you to model to make good eye contact and listen to the students who are in your group. Don't feel pressure to give advice or solve someone's problems or minimize how they're feeling and pretend that you know what they're going through. Just listen, all right? That's where a lot of the ministry takes place, okay, of being a retreat leader. Just listen. Encourage participation and at times start discussions. So if you're offering up a question for the group and no one jumps in right away, you can be the one to set the tone and answer the question for the group. Encourage participation by inviting everyone to participate. And before your group begins, at the beginning of the day, maybe the first group meeting, you want everyone to know that one of the goals is that everyone will participate in the retreat. All right? Be genuine, warm, understanding, inviting, so that people will want to participate. All right? So you set the tone. You and your behavior and your relationship and your interaction with your co-leader, co-small group facilitator really does make a difference. Remember that. All right, another thing to remember, sometimes it's okay to have silence in your small group. I know sometimes we feel sort of awkward if there's a sort of a silence going on in our small group. But in reality, some of the most powerful experiences on retreats can be experiences of silence, where the group is just sort of sitting together in silence. Think of an old married couple who's been married for 50 years. They barely talk when they go out to dinner because of the closeness of that relationship. Well, sometimes things don't need to be said. So make sure you're kind of gauging your group. Read their body language. If people are sort of leaning in, sitting up, leaning in, not necessarily always making eye contact, but if they seem engaged and focused, then resist the urge to speak out right away. Allow some of that silence to happen. And then maybe continue on by inviting someone who hasn't spoken up to share. And of course, you can let them know too, they can feel free to pass if they don't want to share. But it's good to invite those who haven't been participating as much maybe to share. If the group seems distracted, ask a question to move the conversation in a new direction, especially open-ended questions. We want to avoid yes or no questions because then people can just say yes, no, and we can move on, but we don't really share much. We don't really learn much as a group. So try to read the group when you have some silence. Are they engaged? Are they focused? Are they interested? Are they thinking, or are they distracted and sort of just kind of looking around and trying to pass the time? And then two things, balance and boundaries. Balance is really important in small group discussion. Sometimes you get people who share too frequently or share things that are too intimate about their lives, too personal. Try to make sure no one is dominating the conversation. Those who are talking too much, if you could gently remind them that everyone, one of the goals of the group is to have everyone share. And if somebody's not speaking enough, like we talked about, or like we mentioned with the silence thing, feel free to invite them to participate, to be a part of the conversation. They can always feel free to say no, but at least you've invited them. All right. And boundaries, again, if somebody's talking about things that are way too personal, intimate about their lives, or if they're just off topic, try to carefully steer the discussion back to the retreat and the topics at hand. So you are in charge of kind of where the direction the conversation goes in. You have the rudder, you have the steering wheel. So make sure you're trying to maintain a balance of vocal people and quiet people talking, but also that the conversation kind of stays within reasonable boundaries in your small group. So just to wrap up, remember God is in charge. You're the facilitator, but God's the leader. God's in charge. You set the tone, so model the behaviors that you want to be reflected in your group. Sometimes it's okay to have silence, and some of the more powerful experiences on retreat can happen in silence. And then finally, you're trying to keep balance between those who are more vocal and more quiet, and making sure that the conversation stays within reasonable boundaries, not too personal and not too off topic. Thank you again for volunteering to be a leader on the sophomore retreat. And we have one more lesson for you in Module 3.